Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the European Young Chemist Network's podcast. My name is Marie, and today I would like to explore with you a unique and exciting career path, being a science communicator. A science communicator's job is essential, as they are the one bridging the gap between the scientific community and the public. The importance of science communication cannot be overstated, as it plays a vital role in promoting scientific literacy, facilitating informed decision-making, and advancing scientific progress. To discuss this topic, I have the privilege of having not one but two amazing guests with me today, Ruth Pereira and Fernando Gomoyon-Bell. Ruth is currently a social media editor for the European Space Agency, and Fernando is the co-founder of Agata, a startup focused on delivering science and innovation to the right audience. But it was not always this way. Both Ruth and Fernando are brilliant chemists by training, but for them it was always about more than just staying at the lab bench. During her PhD, Ruth started an Instagram page called Amazing Chemist, devoted to share her daily lifestyle as a young Portuguese scientist. With now more than 4,000 followers, Ruth did not stop there and extended her scientific outreach with a website, several online courses, and even a podcast. And yes, all that during her graduate studies. For Fernando, the scientific outreach also started during his PhD when he was chair of the EYCN. After his graduate studies, he rapidly transitioned to science communication with an internship at Chemistry World and was then coordinating PR and social media strategy at the EYCN in Tarragona and later for the Graphene flagship. During that time, he was also contributing to science magazines like Chemistry World and CNN, and was even co-hosting a science TV show called En Ruta con la Ciencia. But because every journey in SciComm is unique, mentoring can turn out to be key when going as a full-time science communicator, and you will see that the relationship between Ruth and Fernando illustrates that brilliantly. With that, I will leave the word to my guests. Ruth, Fernando, welcome to the EYCN podcast, and thank you for accepting my invitation. My first question for you would be, what is a typical day like in the life of a science communicator?
Well, first of all, Marie, thank you so much for inviting us to the podcast. I think it's a great opportunity to talk about science communication with the EYCN, and I love this community, so it's great to spread the word a little bit about what we do. And I'd probably let Ruth talk about her typical day after me, but my typical day is basically chaos and responding to a bunch of emails and writing a lot. I don't think the typical day differs much from the typical day of a PhD student or a postdoc. It's basically being in front of the computer instead of being in front of the fume hood in the lab, and it's all about writing a lot, responding to emails, and doing a little bit of social media when you have some time. And if you do some design, which is normally not my case, it's also about designing cool graphics and videos. But I think we've got a better expert in that field in this podcast for explaining what she does in that sense.
Yeah, first of all, thank you also for inviting me to share this space with Fernando, which is always an honor to be invited in something in the framework of EYCN, and especially with him, because he's a very special person in my life, professionally, mostly. But for me, it's very different from what he described, but I guess that changes a lot regarding your position as a science communicator. So for me, I work on social media, and it's mostly about reading articles, writing tweets, writing scripts for videos from these articles, recording videos, editing videos, having meetings to coordinate with collaborators within our team, and so on and so forth. So it changes. Obviously, you cannot have a direct answer to what is a day in the life of a science communicator, I think.
Yeah, in that sense, if I may just quickly add, when I do like trainings about science communication, I normally have a slide that explains that science communication is not like one single thing. It's like chemistry. You can have organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, analytical chemistry, and the days of different researchers will differ tremendously between an analytical chemist and an organic chemist, for example. So for us, it's the same. I do mostly writing and emails because that's what we do now in the agency. We have a bunch of European projects, so it's a lot about talking to the researchers and preparing articles for web pages and press releases and stuff like that. But of course, if you work in a different field like social media, you'll be doing a bunch of videos. If you work in science policy, you'll probably be doing a lot of reports for politicians or for decision makers. And if you work in, I don't know, like as an influencer in science communication and as a YouTuber, you'll be mostly doing videos and recording yourself and maybe even streaming on platforms like Twitch. So it's very different for the different profiles. And then there's also outreach, of course, talking to the younger audiences, and that will probably involve being a little bit more in the lab and doing more experiments and hands-on stuff compared to what we do. But there's so many different careers within the science comms spectrum that it's also very exciting to discover the different things that you get to do as a science communicator and the different options you have out there.
So from what you say, SciComm actually offers a very rich array of careers, and there really isn't a typical day in the end. But one question we had from our audience on Instagram was, how easily can one make a living when working full-time as a science communicator?
I'm not going to say it's easy, but I think it's the same for any other career choice that you get. It all depends on the experience you have. Be aware that things like even volunteering during your PhD counts as experience for most of these positions. If you highlight that in your cover letters and in your resumes when you apply for a position in science communication, I think it's growing as a field, and now you can find a lot of opportunities in Europe. Now, many of the European projects funded by the European Commission even require to have a percentage of the budget dedicated to science communication, and I think it's the same case with some local and national grants, like for example in Switzerland and other countries. So there are positions out there, and then of course there's new jobs coming up every day. Like I was just talking about YouTubers. 10 years ago you probably wouldn't have thought of that as a career path, but there's famous science YouTubers in Spain, for example, that 10 years ago were struggling to get a few hundred followers, and now they actually employ a team of 4 or 5 people to deal with the production, with the writing, with the editing of the videos. So it's definitely a career option for people with a chemistry or a science background. But as everything in life, it's all about being in the right circles and in the right network. And things like EYCN really help through workshops and different seminars and conferences and stuff like that to basically give visibility to these careers. So keep an eye on the different options, not only science communication, but keep an eye on the different options right there, and eventually you'll certainly find jobs that you like. And then I know I talk from a position of huge privilege, but if you don't like a job, feel free to try and change and find something that you really like. It's often a good strategy to end up somewhere you really enjoy.
Yeah, or create your own with the startup. It's it's the perfect illustration with Agatha.
Or but if you can always create your own stuff.
Yeah, I would say that sometimes we cannot find exactly a defined path, but we can create one ourselves, and that's a good alternative. But as Fernando was saying, and this was my experience personally, and I think his experience too, you have to find the right people. And sometimes that takes time, but you need to put yourself out there to join this type of network and to do a lot of research, actually, to meet people that inspire you, that you think are interesting, that have interesting career paths, and think about what can you learn from them, what can they help you with. And that's mostly the relationship we have as mentor and mentee. So that we can explain that after, of course, but this really works and helps people find their path.
Yeah, I mean, it's really the power of networking in the end, and you never know when it's going to pay off. So I think this also illustrates that quite nicely. So a follow-up question actually from the followers on Instagram was, I mean, for you, it's maybe going to be easy because you were both doing a lot of science communication before, but how do you know that this is a path for you? And because you both knew about the science part prior hand, how do you learn about the communication part? Like, did you take any special trainings or...
I always say that my career in that sense was very messy and very disorganized. I didn't follow like a strict, doing a PhD and then doing some training in science comms and then finding a job in science comms. I think now we've got a lot of resources online to find good trainings in many different fields. Like if you want to learn how to do 3D graphics on Blender, you can probably find a bunch of YouTube videos about that. So it's the same for science communication. It's the same for basically anything. In my case, I was very lucky to find some people that supported some of the outreach and science comms activities that I did during my PhD. And at some point, they invited me to a conference on outreach, science comms, science journalism. It was a little bit of a mix. So they told me, hey, why don't you come here? And it was the first time where I saw that you could do something in that field and you could actually work and get paid to do science comms. So that was a big eye opener. And then after the PhD, instead of looking for postdocs, I started looking for jobs and internships in this field to kind of jump from one place to the other. And I didn't get proper training until I found like a job, and through that job I got stability and some support from the HR department at EYCN actually to do sort of a master's degree in Barcelona. But there's many free training opportunities online. There's many courses organized by EYCN online, but also probably your local universities, your local research centers, and there's a lot of masters and real, let's say, academic training programs. I think only in Spain you have at least 5-6 universities doing them now. So I'm pretty sure if you go to other countries, you'll find them too. And a bunch of universities do them online as well. So it's good to find some training. But of course, you can also find jobs without any formal training. If you find a supportive boss or a supportive, team that want to hire you. I don't know how was the case for you.
For me, well, basically, I think that I started before having any type of formation on that. So I started Amazing Chemist knowing zero about social media, just from a user point of view, not from a creator point of view. So then I started learning while in the process. And as I started to wanting it to grow, I realized that I needed training for that and special training in digital marketing. So I took advantage of one thing that it's awesome in my university, which is that once you're a student, you can go to one free course per semester of any academic degree that you want within the university. And I studied at the University of Aveiro, and we have this campus where we all study together. So there's chemistry, physics, mathematics, mechanical engineering, languages, economics, everything is together. So I could easily go out of the lab and go to a lesson of like 1 hour, 2 hours of digital marketing and come back to the lab, which was perfect. So I did that. And I joined a class of digital marketing from a bachelor's degree in marketing, which was like first degree of knowledge, felt completely lost, but really got inspired and learned a lot about how to design a campaign, how to promote a brand on social media, and how to promote a brand with email marketing, for example. So a lot of different ideas came to mind that I hadn't really thought about them. And during that course, the professor, which was always like pushing me to my limit and was really, really hard for me because I was coming from a different background, she told me, why don't you apply for a master's degree in digital marketing? It's going to open, it's a new course, and why not? And I said, well, taking a master's during my PhD would be challenging, but why not? So I applied twice, but I couldn't get in because I did not have enough of a grade to get in because I come from a chemistry background. So my grades were lowered because I wasn't from the right background to get into that master's. And of course it's a good grade for a chemist, but compared to marketing students, I was a bit low. So I decided, okay, this is not the path. I really like to see no as a redirection. So I thought, okay, this is not my path, don't worry. But I'll still go to 2 classes that I can go for free. And so I signed up for content production, and one was on photography and sound, and the other one was on video. And it was the most fun I had. Coincidence or not, that was my last semester in Aveiro, because then I moved to Pavia to do actually the last semester, the last 4 months of my PhD, because I didn't know. And I started to apply for jobs, and then I put a pause on that and moved again. But yeah, I would say, of course, there is proper training in science communication. I don't think I did that in terms of doing a master's in science communication. I saw a lot of webinars, of course, and a lot of free stuff. As Fernando was saying, you can find a lot online, and of course within the EYCN too. But I always focused on learning digital marketing, like as a brand, as you can promote a brand, as you can promote something, and not specifically science communication, because then I'd like to think about the challenge of picking stuff that are being used for digital marketing as brand marketing and then turning it into science communication.
I mean, that's absolutely outstanding. And I think we can feel from your 2 testimonies that you really invested a lot of, personal time and commitment and energy to go for what was in the end your passion and what is your living now. So I think that's really impressive on both sides. Absolutely. And I mean, we covered now a lot of different medias, and I think these are the things that you also work on a daily basis. I mean, Ruth, you're more on the social media, so it's more video contents. We know depending on the social media, it can change a lot. I think Fernando, you also covered a lot from the articles to the TV show. I have to say, I was extremely impressed with my little Spanish. I watched a couple of the videos of En Ruta con la Ciencia, and it's really outstanding. I was really amazed of what you two achieved on your personal journeys. But since you worked with so many science communication medias, like in your perspective, especially nowadays, what would be for you the most effective media? How do you reach out to the global community, and how do you think this can change in the future?
You'd be more amazed if you actually knew the budget and the resources we had for that TV show. It was a regional TV show, working on national funding for outreach and science dissemination, and it was a very, very small team, but it was a great experience. I mean, honestly, I don't think I've got a favorite way of communicating. Sometimes in-person outreach shows to 10 people are way more powerful and way more amazing in terms of reaching out and actually making an impact than maybe having a TV show or a YouTube channel with 10 million followers or 10 million views, because you can actually talk to the people and make a direct impact on someone. But it's complicated to measure that. I mean, 5 years ago, I would have probably said, oh, Twitter is the best thing ever to create a community. Now, of course, Twitter is destroyed by someone who we cannot actually name. It's like Voldemort, but for social media. In my case, I think my favorite media, I'm not gonna say most effective, because again, it's very hard to measure how you reach people. My favorite media, it's normally radio, because it's sort of you can get the science in programs, and it shows that people don't expect it. So people are listening to a magazine type show, and they're just listening to people talk about the news and about whatever is happening in the world, and then suddenly they get a little bit of science. And I think that unexpected part of it is really great, because you get the science in without actually looking for it. If you are on an online newspaper, you have to actively go to the science section and look up for look out for the science stories. If you are on Twitter or Instagram, you need to subscribe to a channel, you need to follow someone, so you must be interested already. But if it's something like a radio, you may just be listening to something and suddenly bump into the science. Or outreach shows, like I said before. If something is happening in your city, like Pint of Science, you may go to your usual pub and suddenly discover there's a show on science. That's I think the most amazing way to reach people. But of course that will certainly change. People have like shorter attention spans, and I'm not here the expert on Instagram and TikTok. We've got a way better expert in short video formats. So probably that's what's going to come up afterwards, and we'll need to adapt. A couple of weeks ago, talking about marketing, I was in a very interesting marketing seminar from the Wellcome Trust here in London, and they had a very interesting session on TikTok for the National Gallery, and how they had to redesign their whole video strategy to keep people engaged while learning about paintings of the 17th century. And I think science communicators could learn a lot from that. But I'm not even on TikTok, so I'm not even going to get into that. We got better experts here.
I'm not on TikTok yet, but it's definitely in my plans. I really need to. Of course, coming from my background, I have to say social media. Not in terms of effectiveness, as Fernando was saying. I do agree with him, and I love those events. So I know they truly have an impact on a number of people. But in terms of reaching more people at this moment, and a variety of them, I think it's social media, because it's always with us. It's free of charge for the consumer, and it delivers curated content because the algorithm favors what you like. So it gives you more of that. And it's basically what the audience wants. But the thing is, social media is always changing, and I'm a very optimistic person, which this will probably not end as I wish it would, but I see social media evolving into something better. And in my opinion, something a bit more professional, more controlled, especially regarding fake news. I think this is an upcoming science communicator job that could come up in the near future, which is I think it already exists, but basically monitoring social media and finding fake news, helping report that news, and help teach the audience how to spot fake news, for example. This is very, very important, because besides creating scientific content, it's actually important to see what content is out there and how we can guarantee that it's correct, it's scientifically correct, and it's not confusing people. Saying that, I would love to try TV. So I would really, really love to be a TV host for a scientific show. And honestly, I have so many ideas, especially like one where I do science experiments for kids. And I think that's something that is lacking in Portugal. We don't have like a Saturday TV show for science, or even once a month. And it would be really, really lovely we can find debates that have things about science, and but not like a proper science TV show like Bill Nye the Science Guy or something like that. And it would be really, really lovely to see if Portugal could finally invest in something like that. I volunteer as a tribute.
And if you're not restricted to Portugal, I would be really excited for you and Fernando to have a TV show together. That would be like, amazingly successful TV show. I see that in the future. Thanks a lot for sharing. I think you've already shared a really personal experience as well, but I want to go maybe a bit deeper in the personal perspective, and I'd like to hear from you. What were the main challenges that you face or still face? So, I mean, Ruth, you quickly mentioned fake news. I guess that's a really huge topic as a science communicator. What do you see as your main challenge currently or in the past?
I think fake news is a very, very good one, and probably a very interesting topic for even a standalone podcast, because there's so much going on lately with fake news, and especially in science. again, like you said at the beginning, I used to work for the graphene flagship, and I happened to be there when the, myth of COVID vaccines having graphene inside sort of spread everywhere, which was completely insane, obviously. But we got journalists, like very serious journalists, like France Press, Reuters, like very high-end journalists contacting our press department, being like, "Is this true?" And it was a challenge to reply in a way that wasn't like, "Of course it's not true." You had to give like actual evidence and maybe put them in touch with experts that were willing to give a proper response, and not the logical response, which would be to be like, "Of course it." Anyway, but I think another big challenge, at least for me, it's always been convincing researchers, although it's, awareness is a little bit better today, convincing researchers that this is a very important part of the job. And even if they don't like to do it, they need to engage with people to do it on their behalf, and they need to take this into account when they plan for their budget for the project, and they need to take this into account when they apply for grants. They need to take this into account when they publish a paper. A lot of people are very surprised when I tell them that some researchers actively reach out to me after publishing a paper and go like, "Hey, could you cover this on Chemistry Wall or whatever magazine?" And it's like, "Oh," and it just works like that people just send you their papers, and it's like, "Yeah, it's that simple. Just send me your paper, and then I'll read it." If you don't send it to me, like, how am I supposed to find your single paper among the 1,000 papers published in JACS that day? It's very hard. So actively reaching out to scientists and explaining how and why this is important, it's complicated, but I think it's getting a bit better. I want to be optimistic too, and I think it's getting better. But explaining that it actually costs money. When you send a quote and people go like, "Oh, I'm not gonna pay this much for a social media manager, that's insane." It's like, yeah, but you have to pay a whole person, you have to pay a graphic designer, you have to. So it's sometimes more than you think to do all of this job, and something as a podcast that you're doing as a EYCN volunteer activity. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of planning. So it's complicated to convince researchers about this. I think that's one of the biggest struggles, but luckily it's getting better. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I would say generally speaking, it's about respect, and how much do you respect this profession, and how do you see it as a real occupation and not a volunteer work, not a hobby. And I want to highlight, I'm speaking with the hat of amazing chemist right now. So of course people don't like this term, but amazing chemist, she's an influencer. She's a digital influencer. And one of the things that hurts me the most throughout this journey is to see science and scientific brands and brands that are somehow related to science paying influencers that don't know what they are saying to say stuff about science. And of course, when you tell someone that it's not a science communicator, like when you give them a proper text, they will say the correct thing. But then tomorrow they can be spreading fake news because they don't really understand science. So it's not their fault, but you need to be responsible for the person who is giving the face to your brand. So I think that sometimes companies still neglect science influencers because, well, it's a niche thing, so we don't have a lot of followers compared to a fashionista, fashion style influencer. But the thing is, we do know what we are talking about, and probably we also have a different angle on the text that you are providing us, so we can relate to our research field. We can have some creativity into it, and we are not just going to share the text that you sent us. I see that happening a lot in Canada, for example, in the US. They are reaching out to science influencers like Science Sam, like Darian, like Science Bay. So there's a lot of things in motion, but I think that in Europe, I still don't see that much. and it would be lovely to see it. So that's personally one of my biggest challenges. And of course, in terms of other challenges like salary, like opportunities, I think SciComm jobs are not respected enough yet. Of course, in some countries more than others, but from my experience as amazing chemist, I'm not speaking in my current occupation, of course. I see that there's not a lot of respect, and that's mostly why I chose this career path, and I decided that I had to leave my country at the time because I didn't find job opportunities here.
I mean, thanks for bringing all these points. It really saddens me to know that it's still not there, but hopefully it will all change in the future. Because as I mentioned in the intro, like the job that you have now, especially when we see the huge disbelief that the general public has in science, we saw that with climate change, with the COVID, and I mean, you guys are really bridging the gap, if I can say, and this is why this job is so important, and this is also why we need amazing science communicators like yourself, but also a lot more science communicators per se. So I mean, I wanted to end on a more positive note. So I mean, you announced some of the challenges that you face on a daily basis, but maybe if you could share like a personal story of like one situation that you experienced that kind of like also comforted your decision of becoming a full-time science communicator.
Every time you get an email from a researcher or a scientist saying, I'm so happy with this article, it turned out great, or this graphic looks amazing, now I understand why we're doing this, it's really, really rewarding. And then, I don't know why, when I read the question, first I thought of weird, happy stuff that I had, achieved thanks to science communication, and I thought of like crazy opportunities that only came up because of this crazy job. And I thought of like my internship in chemistry world and how I somehow ended up in the facilities where they test all the metals and all the gold coins made in the UK in London. So it was really weird because at some point I was holding a £50,000 coin with the Queen face on it, and it was the place where they actually made the test to see if that was pure gold or pure silver or whatever it was. And that was like a crazy thing to be touching those coins and those medals and those amazing pieces of collectibles in London. That was crazy. And then with the flagship, it was a very, very big project, and I at some point ended up in the north of Sweden in Kiruna, which is where they have an ESA, precisely a center for rocket launching. And it was amazing because I got to see a tiny rocket. It wasn't like a proper NASA big rocket. It was one of these rockets they sent to test microgravity. So it just goes up and then falls down in like 10 minutes. But I got to see it, like the launch and the people around it. And it was, I mean, you end up in the craziest situations, and it's really cool when you get to do all these things just because you're a science communicator and you get to write about these things and amazing stuff happening in the world of science. And I think it's a really, really cool job. Of course, you've got to like it. I know people that eventually, go back to the lab or they don't enjoy, but I think it's a really rewarding job. And especially, like I said, when you get an email of someone being like, oh, this is a very nice article, I really like how you put it together, and then they see the actual value of what you've done, and they see companies contacting them, or they see their paper more cited, and they see the importance of SciComm. That's a very rewarding thing. Not that we do it for the nice emails, but it's nice to get them every now and then.
Yeah, for me, it's all about helping people, honestly. That's one of my personal core values, and I know that's just what I need to do to be happy. So right now, I have the opportunity to help students on their career path, to start on SciComm, but also to make science understandable. And it's really, really nice to get a message saying that people love our content that we are producing, that they really like the way we explain stuff, for example, that they like a video, that it's really, really good to get this feedback. So I don't have crazy stories like Fernando yet. But of course, I've had those moments, especially, of course, my first day in ESA, where I just walked in and I was like, whoa, this is real. This is finally happening. So yeah, I guess that I already knew that I wanted to do this. And of course, I love to do it. But yeah, there are these days where you remind yourself why you are doing it, and it's great.
I mean, I don't want to like go again, but like one thing that you said kind of reminded me of my moments at ICIQ when I did a little bit more of outreach instead of just SciComm and press releases. And something that scientists experience every now and then in the lab, and they have this eureka moment. I think it's very nice because when you do science communication, you get to sometimes experience that eureka moment in other people, and that's also a very rewarding situation. Like Rute was saying, now it's like you make an experiment, you explain something, and you see someone understanding why the COVID vaccine works, or why graphene is this or that, or why, I don't know, going to space is important, or what that satellite is getting those images, and then people go like, now I understand. And that moment is like, it's almost the same as, you know, mixing something up in the lab and then getting an amazing TLC with only a pure product, and then you don't have to purify it because it crystallizes automatically. So it's the same thing. It's like, oh, this has worked, and now someone knows something more because of what we've done, and I think that's also very, very cool and like feeling.
That's so awesome. And I mean, I can feel the passion in both of these testimonies, which is really outstanding. I mean, we're coming to the end of the podcast, and I saved the best question for last. We had a bit of a teaser in introduction, but I invited both of you today because of your special relationship. So I mean, I don't know, maybe Ruth, you want to tell us more about how you met Fernando and how he helped you through your career as a science communicator?
Okay, so first thing first, I joined the Portuguese Chemical Society as one of their representatives, and then I joined EYCN, and I already knew João Borges, which is an old chair for the EYCN and the International Young Chemists Network also. And João is great. And he saw that I was really into science communication, that I was getting really into it. And so I think last year, well, am I mistaken? I mean, August 2022, as we were preparing to join EUCAMS, a conference in Lisbon, he told me that Fernando would be the best person to be a mentor within the International Young Chemists Network mentorship program. And so, of course, I said yes, because it was coming from João, and João always knows what's right. So Fernando was extremely nice from the first email, and we met in Lisbon during the conference. And I guess it was like an instant click. I don't know if it's because he's Spanish and I'm Portuguese, but we kind of get along really well. He introduced me to a bunch of people immediately. He knew me from like 5 minutes. He was introducing me to anyone, like, this is Ruth, this is my mentee. And we got to talk a bit, and I told him, look, I don't need training at this point. I need help in applying to SciComm jobs because I really want to find a SciComm job and finish my PhD. So I told him I already applied to Nature at that point and it was unsuccessful. And then he helped me apply for the Royal Society of Chemistry to an opportunity which was directed to email marketing, which was a bit different than what I was looking for. But of course, it was in the field, so it was interesting. And then around November last year, this opportunity at ESA came up. And it was like, I cried the day that I saw the job opportunity. I called my mom crying like, this exists? And she was like, why are you crying? It's just open. And I said, if this exists, it means that my dream job exists. So even if I don't get this, it exists. Do you know how awesome this is? People get paid to do this. This is wonderful. And then I applied. It was like a crazy month because I was in Pavia doing all the NMR measurements you could think of my magnetic nanoparticles, learning a lot of new stuff, and also like updating my website, producing a portfolio, writing the most awesome motivation letter with the help of Fernando, of course. And then I submitted around the last day, and I thought I was never going to get it. Honestly, I tell my colleagues that every day. I thought I was never going to get in this, but then they called me, and Fernando helped me throughout the process. So preparing for the interviews, for the short calls, for all the challenges, he was always with me, in contact within that month. I think it was like a month during the process. So it really helped. And of course, the mentorship programs, they need to work for what works for you. So in my case, I wasn't looking for training. And as you can see, Fernando has a lot of qualities that I don't use properly in my job. So, I mean, if I wanted to pursue something different from him, I wouldn't exactly need training from him. It's not that type of relationship. It's more about contacts and about sometimes exchanging a lot of ideas, because as he was saying, he has a lot of experience in writing and reaching out to people, and me, I'm more on the social media and videos part. So sometimes we exchange a lot of ideas because we kind of complement each other on that part. So yeah, I think mentorship programs are really great, but also I think you need to know what to ask for, and not just as a mentee, not just expect that your mentor will have everything decided for you and will have the perfect plan, because it's your life, it's your career path. So go after what you want. And basically that's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it was amazing to have this opportunity, because I had never done any mentoring either side before this, until a couple of years ago I started doing this mentorship programs, both as a mentor and as a mentee. And this one was really, really good because it connected people in very similar fields. So in our case, like Ruth said, it was a very, very instant connection when we met in person in Lisbon. And being at a conference, it was a great opportunity to get to know the people in the field and start connecting to a new network of people in science and in science communication. But I think, like she said, the mentorship is not about, I'm the mentor, you're the mentee, I need to teach you everything I know, grasshopper kind of thing. It's actually more of a friends relationship where you talk a lot, you see what the other person wants, and you try to adapt, and you try to get the most of each other, because as a mentor you also learn a lot about the other person, and you learn a lot about the needs, the particular needs, and what you need to do. So it's really interesting to have this mentorship opportunity, and it's really cool that EYCN, IYCN, and these networks are offering this type of opportunities. And if you find anything like that in networks like this or in your university, try to do it. It's normally not a lot of time, and you get to meet new people. And worst case, you just connect to someone else on LinkedIn. Best case scenario, you actually develop a professional relationship. And I think that's the key, that you develop a relationship and a friendship that will outlast the mentorship program. So now we still talk very frequently. Normally, while doing the dishes or other like house chores, we just call each other and spend like an hour talking about like life updates, what we've been up to, and if there's any collaboration opportunities or things like that. And it's we may actually be applying for some funding together if we ever get to sitting down and putting together a proposal. So it's really cool to have this network. And then I'm sure that in the future, I think something that I've experienced in the field of science communication that I hadn't seen that much in research before is that people tend to be very helpful and very open to call emails of people being like, hey, how is it working in your field? Like just last week, I had a call with someone in the States who was wondering about the field of science communication. And after the mentorship, that's even stronger, that freedom to ask anything about a new job opportunity, a new grant, how you do things in the field. It's really like a very, very strong relationship in that sense. So it's a very collaborative field. People are open to giving advice very often. So I really like this about science communication and about the relationship I have with Ruth. It's very nice to be able to call someone who understands the struggles of the job and they maybe sometimes just vent and also come together and think of new ideas that could happen. And it's a little bit of a shame that she's not in chemistry at the moment, because then we don't go to the same conferences, but I'm sure that we'll end up meeting maybe in the next UChems conference in Dublin, or maybe in a science communication conference, because there's a lot of them happening, and that's not where chemists and researchers go, but secret conferences where we talk about TikTok and press releases, and we basically I was gonna use a word that we can probably use in the podcast, but yeah, we talk about our struggles with scientists in our conferences. I call them more like therapy sessions. It's a little bit weird when you meet a lot of science communicators and press officers. They all have the same problems, and it's very interesting to share them.
That's so amazing to hear. And, I'm really looking for your upcoming collaborations, maybe the TV show again. And, I'm really grateful because I also got to meet you two in person at the ECC8 in Lisbon. This is also a call for action to all our listeners to, sign up for the ECC9 in Dublin next summer. And also don't forget to follow both amazing chemists and Agatha, and both Ruth and Fernando on social media. And if you ever thought about science communication as your passion and as your future job, I can say that you can reach out to both of them. They will be more than happy to answer your potential questions. And Fernando and Ruth, thank you so much for your time. It was really great to hear about both of your journeys.
I want to thank everyone again for inviting me and sharing this space with Fernando once again. I would give you some suggestions. So if you are in EYCN, join the comms team. I was part of the comms team. It was awesome. I left a digital kind of workshop on how to manage social media. So you have all the things you need to manage EYCN's social media, which is pretty cool. I was under the team of Patrick, and it was really, really nice. Another thing is that you shouldn't wait to be ready to start. So most people really think that they should get proper training on science communication before starting. Just don't. You will learn within the process. We are both examples of that. So don't wait until your PhD is finished, your master's is finished, or to start something. Just start whenever you feel like it, and you will learn with the process. And once you finish that degree, you will have experience. And I'm an example of that. I didn't mention that, but of course I had that training that I mentioned, but it was the 4 or 5 years of experience I had with an amazing chemist that gave me this job opportunity. So this is valued. Hobbies like EYCN are valued. Volunteer time on science communication is valued. So if you really want to try it, do it. And just explore whatever your ikigai is and find it, please.
Thank you so much, Marie, for inviting us to be here. It's been really cool experience chatting with you. And then I know who I was talking to the other day, because I keep saying, don't do stuff for free. But it's like the EYCN. I love you guys so much. I always say yes to any crazy stuff you suggest, and I'm sure that if you're organizing anything in Dublin, I'll be happy to to collaborate. Please just don't make a workshop on science communication and invite me, because I think they're gonna get tired of my face. Maybe invite Ruth so we can have her in Dublin, and that would be an amazing opportunity to meet again. Plus it's Dublin, so party is guaranteed there, and it's a very nice city. Anyway, I think it's been a great experience, and we've been talking for almost an hour, and it feels like it's been 10 minutes, because it's such a great group of people, and I really love the EYCN and the opportunities it brings. And like you said, please, if you're interested in science communication, reach out to either of us. Feel free to connect on Twitter or whatever it's called today, or LinkedIn, or email. We're pretty easy to find on the internet. And yeah, if you are in the EYCN, make the most of every opportunity you get with your local societies, with your European societies. Try to go to as many workshops and events as you possibly can, because those connections, you never know, but they may actually give you more opportunities in the future. And it's always good to have that bunch of people, that bunch of friends that you meet in the local societies, the national societies, and the EYCN, IYCN. It's keep that and treasure that, because it's a fantastic experience and it lasts forever. So yeah, thanks again for having me here.
Hi everyone, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast as much as I enjoyed recording it. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes.